Hi, good afternoon. My name is Lisa Condon, and I am so excited to be here at the Spiritual Growth Forum. And my topic today is gratitude as a verb. This is an important topic for me for a multitude of reasons that we'll go into. But I think in order for me to explain why gratitude is so important, I think it's also important to understand kind of where I came from. So I like to say that I grew up professionally in the corporate world. And within that corporate world, there are a lot of must do's, must haves, including at that point in my life, climbing the ladder and really getting that title or that next level. And all during that time, something was always a little bit missing for me. And I never really knew what that was. As I kind of progressed in my life and in my own journey, I realized a lot of that was aligning with my own core values. But ultimately, what I really realized maybe now about 15, 16 years ago was that the foundation of my life, of what I needed to build on, really needed to be steeped in this gratitude. And it all started with a Facebook post. Yes, it did. And so my friend Terry, whom I had worked with for years, had started posting on Facebook 3 things I'm grateful for. And I saw it a few times and I thought, wow, this is kind of interesting. And I reached out to her and said, Terry, do you think I could steal this from you? Do you think, how do you feel about that? And she said, of course, do it. So I started doing it. And ultimately, it was just something that I did. I just posted 3 things that I was grateful for, oftentimes very topical. And sometimes it would be every day, and then it would stop. And then I would start again. And I just kind of would go down this path. And then something started changing for me. And I wasn't quite sure what it was, but days that maybe I didn't have that spark or I didn't feel just as upbeat as I normally would, turned out those were the days that I was not starting my day with a gratitude practice. And when I say gratitude practice, again, at that point, it was just posting 3 things I was grateful for. So there was a little aha moment for me. And then that just really progressed and exploded. And so now, besides the fact that professionally, I'm a Six Sigma black belt, like I'm really process driven in my business life. But when it comes to me as a person and my holistic life and everything that I do in business or personal is really rooted in gratitude. And so ultimately, I like to say I'm a gratitude practitioner. And when I started changing that vernacular for myself, it really just changed things for me and how I saw and witnessed the world. And it was exciting, and it continues to be exciting and magical. And so if you look up the word gratitude, and I want to actually read it for you, but if you just look up the word gratitude in the dictionary, this is what you're going to see. Gratitude is a noun, and it's the quality of being thankful, readiness to show appreciation for, and to return kindness. And I remember reading that many years ago and thinking, okay, that's great, but if my purpose in this world is about spreading the seeds of gratitude, which it is, and I believe that it is, then doesn't gratitude become a verb? And isn't it actionable? Because it's one thing to know gratitude and it's one thing to understand what it is. It is another thing to really act on it. So today, what I want to talk to you about is how to act on it. And I've come up with these 9 steps of gratitude that I want to walk you through. And I want to take each one of them and dive into them a little bit deeper and also be able to talk about what does it mean to be actionable. So when I talk about the fact that my purpose in life is spreading the seeds of gratitude, for me, what that looks like is I still post my 3 things I'm grateful for. It is on my Facebook page every day, and people comment on it. And I also have a lot of conversations in person about it, and I always welcome it. So if you ever meet me or you ever reach out to me, please, let's talk about it. I love to hear what resonates with you. One of the ones that resonated with folks, oh my gosh, I want to say maybe 12, 13 years ago, was when one of the things was my red heels. And what my red heels meant to me is something very different than what it evoked in other people. But what it meant to me was I was actually going into something that was going to be pretty tough. And by wearing my red heels, it was giving me back my power. I didn't post about that. I was a little bit, I would say, had some ambiguity around it because I wanted the red heels to mean whatever it meant for other people. And so, again, for me, that's part of how I spread seeds of gratitude. Another way is you'll see my book right here in the background, which is Stepping into Gratitude. And I brought authors together and had them tell their stories of gratitude and how they have stepped into their own gratitude and what that looks like. So there's all kinds of things that I do, but talking about the 9 steps of gratitude and how to turn gratitude from a noun into a verb is so incredibly important to me, because that's how we are going to continue to spread those seeds and connect with one another. And if I'm connecting with you and then you go and connect with 10 other people and you're putting gratitude forward and you're really acting in gratitude, think about what that feels like and what that looks like and how that could change the world and how we perceive it 10, 15, 20 years down the road, or 10, 15, 20 minutes down the road. There is a domino effect, and it's so incredibly important. So let's dive in. So 9 steps of gratitude. The very first step of gratitude is the G stands for ground. So when you ground yourself in gratitude and how you act upon that, there are all kinds of modalities to do this. One of the things I like to start with is what I call hand over heart. And I do this before I go on stage and talk. I do this before I go into a meeting that might be a little bit anxious ridden. I do this even before I'm having maybe a tough conversation. But I also do this when I feel like I am just really, really excited about something and I'm, just all over the place. This brings me back to center. And this helps me really bring gratitude to myself and to the situation that I am in. So I put my right hand over my heart, my left hand over my right hand, and I do 3 deep breaths. So I want you to do those with me now, if you would, please. So again, right hand over your heart, left hand over your right hand. We're going to close our eyes and do 3 deep breaths. How do you feel? For me, my voice gets a little bit deeper. Each breath is a little bit slower, and it allows me to be in this moment and be right here with you. What it also does is it aligns my heart and my head. And it's funny because that heart and head alignment has come up quite a bit in the past few weeks. And I think, with new moon or whatever else you're looking at the end of the day, there are things that really just have us looking all over the place. Some of my friends call it squirrels. I call it sparkle syndrome. But this again brings it back. But how does that really integrate with gratitude? Well, it all starts with that alignment. And if you are really in alignment and you are in this place right here and right now, then you are actively giving gratitude to the conversation that you might be in, to what you are feeling in this moment, to taking in the information that's being provided to you, or to have a kitty cat come up. But again, what you are doing is you are working through that alignment and being in action of what's happening around you and being involved in what's coming to you and what messages are coming to you and also what you're giving out into the world. Other ways of grounding, there's meditation. One of my favorites is going in your bare feet and walking on grass or sand, wherever you might live, but really getting in tune with nature. That is a beautiful way to ground because, again, it allows you to have that alignment and be present in the space that you're in. And I don't know about you, but I think time is a pretty significant commodity. And if I am giving you my time and I am spending time or you're giving me your time, that is gratitude in motion. And that is so, so beautiful. So the next step of gratitude is the R in gratitude, and that stands for reflect. So when you think about reflection, And the way that I look at it is we are reflecting back on the things that have happened in our life. So I like to think of this as our foundational garden. So let's think about this. As a kid, you had things that were said to you. You had experiences with family, friends, neighbors, any organization you might have been a part of. You had interactions at school, and everything that occurred by you, with you, or for you planted a seed. Everything you heard, everything you saw planted a seed in your foundational garden. And as you reflect on this foundational garden, you have an opportunity to also look at what seeds are you watering in your garden. Are you watering the seeds that maybe make you self-doubt? Are you watering the seeds that maybe don't allow you to feel safe? Are you watering the seeds of people presenting judgment on you or perceived judgment? Or are you watering the seeds where you stood in your power and your confidence, or you felt as though you were the best that you could possibly be in that moment? Which seeds are you watering? And I can tell you, as you shift the water and the focus from seeds that might portray anything that could have any type of negative connotation to those that really are positive and beautiful and magical, that's going to change your perspective. And as you start shifting that and you're reflecting on that, what happens? Well, you're able again to step into this space of gratitude and joy, and really looking ahead and looking forward into how can you take those experiences, even those that might not have been a great experience, you might look at them differently and understand what the learning was from that, and maybe the piece of it that you should water and not the whole thing, and how do you take that all forward. And that only happens if you are sitting and doing some reflection. Now, again, reflection can look different for people. So did you know there are actually 9 types of journaling? So there is an article out there, and look it up, but journaling is one way, traditional journaling, I should say, but there's also photo journaling. There is journaling, which is list making, which list making is one of my love languages, I'll just tell you that. But again, there's ways to reflect. Sometimes you can actually draw a physical garden, and each one of those seeds, give it a name, give it a color, make it the experience, whatever it might be. And just using that as a barometer from which to move the dial and move it closer to gratitude. But again, as you reflect and as you are able to see where you're at right now, only then can you start making small shifts. And as you are starting your gratitude practice and really working through that, then you can also see where some of those shifts need to be made for yourself, and ultimately how that reflects out onto other people. So let's go into the third step of gratitude, which is accept. This one's a hard one, friends. Accepting is hard because you are accepting yourself. And you are accepting yourself. So again, think about this. You have grounded in who you are at the moment, and you have grounded in this space and time of where you're at. And then you've reflected on where you came from. But now you have to accept it. And sometimes do we make choices in the moment that in hindsight, maybe we would have made a different choice? Sure, we've all done it. Or how many of you have had a conversation with yourself or with the imaginary person because a week prior you had a conversation and then thought of 30 other things you wanted to say? It happens to all of us. But here's the thing. You did the best that you could in that moment with the information that you had. Let me say that again. You did the best that you could in that moment with the information that you had. So information that you got 5 seconds later, you didn't have it at that moment. So acceptance can go very, very deep within each of us. And so again, as you are accepting who you are, and you are accepting who you are in this space, but also who you were 10 minutes ago, 10 hours ago, 10 days ago, 10 weeks ago. Because all of that brought you forward to this moment and who you are. And so each of those seeds and each of those experiences and each of those things that were said to you or you said to others or how you just saw life, each of those seeds, how do you accept that? And how do you really bring that in to your life now and knowing where that seed really lives and what you should be focused on with that? That acceptance can be pretty difficult. But think about this. How can you truly accept others for exactly who they are without accepting yourself? That's an important piece. Because oftentimes, if we have any trepidation of accepting who we are as a whole individual, then we're also going to have some conditions around how we accept other people. Imagine, though, if we were all accepting of one another unconditionally. Because just like you don't know my full story, I don't know your full story. And think about where that acceptance of not just self, but then also one another, where that could lead to. And think about the gratitude that lives in that, the gratitude for the relationship, the gratitude for the experiences, shared or unshared, that have brought us to that space of being in time and place together. Because every person you meet that crosses your path, there's a reason. And it could be for that moment. It could be maybe you needed that smile today as they walked by. Or maybe it's because they needed your presence in those few minutes of the exchange that you had. Or maybe it's because they opened the door when you were carrying way too many things. But gratitude is everywhere. And when you accept yourself and everything that you have experienced in your life, then and only then can you truly have gratitude and express your gratitude and acceptance, true, vulnerable acceptance for others. So accepting, write yourself some love letters, friends, acceptance. All right, so let's go into the fourth one, which if you think accept was hard, the fourth step of gratitude is thank. So we often thank other people. I mean, when you think about gratitude, November is like the month of gratitude, right? Because that's when American Thanksgiving is. So if you think about gratitude and you think about thanking, we often think about thanking other people. But when is the last time you thanked yourself? When is the last time that you wrote yourself a little love letter? Or you wrote over here, I have a big whiteboard on my wall. When's the last time you wrote yourself just a little note to say, hey, thanks for all that you're doing. Thanks for, carrying me through whatever trial and tribulation you might have just gone through. Or if you were traveling and you're very weary, and just your body for navigating you through that. Or even just thanking yourself for getting through the day or getting up in the morning, because sometimes we all go through different phases of life, right? We all ebb, flow, and grow. So if you're having a time where getting up in the morning is the only thing that you can do, thank yourself for that. Or if you are going 100 miles an hour and you are just running, thank yourself for being able to have that energy and what you have done to fuel that energy. And again, taking those moments, those true intentional moments, to thank yourself. When you do that, it allows you to pause, that intentional pause, to be in this moment right now and understand what you have brought yourself through, what you have brought into your life, and how you've integrated that. And then guess what? When you start thanking yourself, you start to feel a little bit different. And sometimes if you're thanking yourself, it might not just be the self of now, it might be the self of 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And if you're like me, I'm going to be 50 this year, so maybe close to 50 years ago, right? So you might be thanking yourself for something that happened so long ago, and you didn't even have the ability or the knowledge to thank yourself in that moment. So I'll give you an example. So many years ago, my grandmother was very ill, and I could not get there, and she was in the hospital. I was very, very close to my grandmother, and I wasn't able to get there to the hospital. I was living out of state, and my best friend went to the hospital on my behalf. I think she said she was me. I'm not quite sure, but I'm assuming she did because that's how she got in. And she left a yellow rose for my grandmother and said it was from me. So when I looked at that experience, obviously I was very grateful that my best friend Jen did that. And yet, when I would focus on that, I was always so sad for the longest time that I couldn't get there. And I did a lot of the I should haves, what ifs, all of those things all over myself, so that it was really looking at it in the least positive light that I could. And it made me very sad. But what changed that for me was when I was talking to my father, and it was actually my father was sick, and we were having a conversation. Somehow, the yellow rose at his mother's bedside came up. And I told him the story that it had been Jen that took it, and he never knew. He never knew, and yet that flower being there, which he always thought the nurses had given, really had provided him some comfort knowing that his mom was being taken care of. That changed everything for me, right? And so I started thinking about that, and I thought, wow, had I taken this 500-mile trip to go and see her in the hospital and spent a little bit of time by her bedside, I would not have taken a flower, which then in turn would not have given my father comfort. He would have loved the fact that I came and that I made that gesture to come, but he wouldn't have had the comfort that he had in the thoughts around what that flower evoked in him. And so how lovely is that? And I needed to then say, okay, how do I thank myself in this situation? How do I thank myself for not going and not being there? And I had to turn that conversation for myself. And I had to thank myself for having a best friend for that long that I could count on. I had to thank myself for really being able to say, this is what's important in this moment. And not to say that my grandmother wasn't important, because she really incredibly was, but I could talk with her on the phone, and that was important to me. So I had to look at all of these things and start figuring out how to thank myself, which took me out of this negative space. And when I started being able to thank myself, then I was able to, again, shed that type of gratitude and that conversation and that type of positive energy back out into the world. Because not every situation is as cut and dry as we think it is. So taking that intentional time to thank yourself as you have looked at these experiences in your life. So now what does all of this do? So now we've grounded ourselves, we've reflected, we've accepted as much as we can, and that keeps going deeper, and now we've thanked ourselves. So what's next? Well, the next thing is igniting. So let me tell you, Ignite is so fun, because as you've started doing all of this deep work internally, things just start to ignite, and you start to get motivated, and you start to get really excited. And I don't know about you, but then I have 50 ideas all at one time. So I get an idea journal, and each page has an idea at the top. And as more stuff comes up around it, I might jot notes, or maybe something never comes up again, and that's okay. But something inside of you just gets ignited, and you get motivated, and you get really excited. That's how this book came to be. I just realized that I wanted to spread more seeds of gratitude and impact more people. Well, how do I do that? Book was one other way. There's lots of ways. So what ideas are starting to come to you, and don't dismiss them. Because here's the thing, when you start really looking inward, and you really start aligning your heart and your head, and you start really understanding who you are at the core and how to bring gratitude forward from that space, all kinds of ideas come up. And some of them are fantastic, and some of them are meant for later on in your life. But Make sure you're documenting them because they will come back around at some point. And then act on them. Act on the ideas. And it might not be the grandiose idea that you start with. It might be something really small. But if you think about, and I'm sure many of you have seen that, there are people who paint rocks and then they might have cute sayings on them or just really nice affirmations on them. And if you've seen those, you also know that people that do this will either hide them or put them in places in a public space so that people can come upon them. And then that individual can either take the rock or then they can place it somewhere else. And I guarantee that just started from a really small idea. But now you find them everywhere. So, what are some of the ideas and what are some of the things getting ignited inside of you that you feel like you can put out into the world? And from a place, again, of this really pure, beautiful joy and gratitude, they will come to you and they will keep coming. And see what happens, see what transpires. I think back to what Terry did with posting the 3 things she was grateful for. Now I do it, and I've been doing it, like I said, for almost 16 years, and it is something I do every day. And that in itself then really goes out into the world. But it was ignited by something that somebody else did for a brief moment in time that I saw. And that has just sparked so much. So again, pay attention to what's getting ignited inside of you. Pay attention to it, document it, keep the idea, and then act on it. Take that next step, even no matter how small it might be. Because here's the thing. What's going to happen is you will start to transform, which is the next step of gratitude. So transformation starts internally first. And in fact, there's a Harvard study out there that says when you are in a gratitude practice or when you are sitting in gratitude and actively practicing it, your synapses light up different colors. So I like to say there's a disco ball in my brain all the time and my synapses are just going crazy. But you will start to transform. The things that you tell yourself and how you speak to yourself, you will change the language. The lens in which you see the world will start to change. And even how fast or slow you move or how you do things will change. It starts internally. And then it starts to progress externally, including who you surround yourself with, who you want to be meeting, what books you are reading, what songs you are listening to. All of this shifts and changes. And if you think about tectonic plates and how over time it's very small, right? But they have shifted so much over the years. If you look 100 years ago, 200 years ago, tectonic plates have shifted. But each day they're shifting just a tiny little bit. And that's exactly what happens with the transformation phase. And I'm going to have to sneeze. One moment, please. I love sneezing because it tickles me inside. So thank you for going through that with me. But when you start to transform, again, it starts internally. So if you start thinking about just one thing, and maybe you start with, how am I speaking to myself? What language and what word choices am I using to talk to myself? And making just one small adjustment there, that is transformation. And then maybe it's the words that you use to see the world. And, I like to say I'm a realistic optimist because while I like to see the silver lining in pretty much everything, and I will always find the good majority of the time in things that are happening or going on, but I'm also realistic about it. So for me, I don't want to be naive to what's happening in the world, but I do want to find what is happening from a more universal space that's going on. And that's what I want to focus on. That's where I want to spend my time and energy. Because if I'm spending too much of my time and energy in things that bring me sadness, anxiety, any of those feelings that you want to name that might not, again, be aligned with gratitude or aligned with joy, I don't want to be spending my time there. But it all starts within me. And what am I transforming inside? So again, I would say pick one thing, just one thing. And how do you start there? And self-talk is a big one. Or do you start with having some type of a morning affirmation ritual with yourself? I have an entire morning ritual that I go through. This actually just came up the other day with somebody that I was speaking with. And even if you pull an affirmation card one day or write yourself an affirmation each morning, start there and see what that feels like internally and see how that transforms you. So again, how does that tie in with gratitude? Well, if you're living in this space of trying to look inward and feel the goodness, won't you then exude the goodness? Won't you then express gratitude to others? And none of this happens overnight. This is all muscle that we have to work on. And just like you're going and working out, gratitude is the same way. It's really about starting with you, and then how do you express that out to the world? So again, when you start to transform internally, you'll feel it, and then it will start happening externally and naturally. But here's what's going to happen. So now that you've grounded yourself, you've reflected, you've accepted, you've thanked yourself and others as it comes up, then you have ignited and you've really started to get that spark, and then you've started transforming. Well, what happens next? Well, you start to uncover things. And if you think about the whole adage of, peeling the layers of the onion, you really start to peel layers back of yourself and you start uncovering things. Some things are absolutely beautiful and phenomenal that you didn't even know about yourself. I didn't know that I was a gratitude practitioner. I had no idea. But I knew that the way that I looked and wanted to be part of the world was different than how I was living. But it took me time to really dive in and understand that about myself. But you also might uncover things that might not be as pleasant, I think is the right word. So you might uncover traumas of your life, or you might uncover feelings that you didn't realize you actually had. And so you have to really give yourself grace when you're going through this particular step of gratitude, because as you uncover, all kinds of things come up, feelings come up. It could be that you have to have difficult conversations with people. You could also see that some people don't want you to change. So as you are starting to transform, people really like you the way that you have been. And yet maybe you weren't living in your vulnerable, authentic self. And so they start to move away, or they start to just interact with you differently. These things could all happen. And so giving yourself love and grace and space to have whatever feelings you need to have around this, and then being able to let them go. And then also, again, as you're uncovering things that you're excited about, how do you share that excitement with the world? What does that look like for you? If you're a writer, maybe you write about it. If you're a speaker, maybe you talk about it. Maybe you share it with your family, or maybe you do something completely different. Maybe you're an artist and you want to just change the way that you paint, but making sure that you express it. And maybe you're not even an extrovert and you just need to write it down for yourself or record it for yourself. All of those are exciting ways, but understanding that you will uncover things as you go through almost this metamorphosis, right? And it's okay. And every time you practice these 9 steps of gratitude, you will uncover more and more and more, because there's always layers. There's always layers to who we are. And how exciting is that? And getting to those magical pieces and those magical seeds, and how you put those out into the world. And again, as you're uncovering and you're able to share how you can and what you want to share, that will ultimately help somebody else. And you are then planting your seed of gratitude with them. And that just keeps moving forward. So here's the other thing about uncovering, and this leads to the next step of gratitude. You get to decide what you do with that information. So let's say you've uncovered a situation that you had forgotten about, but it really had impacted you at the core. And I can give you an example of that. There was actually an event that I was a speaker at, I'm going to say 4 or 5 years ago now. And after I was done speaking, I really was excited about how everything went. And I ran into somebody that was at the conference, and they said to me, "Hey, I heard that somebody had gotten up and walked out of your talk." And that planted a seed with me. It really hurt my feelings because what she had heard and the actual incident that happened were two very different things. What had happened was somebody got sick during my talk and needed to leave. That was the reality. So did somebody walk out? Yes. But that seed that was planted with me was really painful and hurtful. And it has taken some time to really uncover that, understand why that hurt me, and understand what I needed to do about that. And then I get to make a decision. And one of the decisions could be I have a conversation with that individual and let them know how that made me feel. Another is I can look at it through the lens of what this individual said wasn't untrue, but they didn't have the full context and I could let it go. Or another decision is I could hold on to that and let that fester with me, right? And really water, going back to the foundational garden, right? I could be watering a seed that truly is only breeding negativity within me. So ultimately, what I decided to do was have the conversation to shed a little more context, but more so how it made me feel. And you know what happened from that? It was a beautiful blossoming conversation that happened, which was they didn't even understand how it had made me feel. Our relationship again went to more of a collaboration from there, and it really just started us on a new pathway. All kinds of things can happen when you make the decision of what to do with the information you now have as you're uncovering. You might uncover that within you, that as a little kid, you really loved being center of attention and singing and dancing and playing instruments. Maybe that's something you uncovered. And now as an adult, that was pushed down, and because maybe somebody said to you, "Oh, wow, you really didn't hit that note very well," and it just shut you down. But what if you start peeling back those layers and all of a sudden that little girl or that little boy wants to come out and start singing again? What do you do with that? And how exciting would that be? All of a sudden karaoke night might be in your future, or maybe it's more than that. Maybe you use that and you decide, hey, this is actually a gift I want to share with the world. Everything that comes up, everything that you uncover about yourself, you get to decide what to do with it. You get to decide. And how exciting is that? And again, how that ties back to gratitude is really about, once you decide, that's an actionable thing, because you're actually making a decision not to do anything if you choose not to, but it's an action. But if you decide to do something with that, or to have a conversation, or to just shed something different out into the world, then again, you are spreading your seeds of gratitude in the way that makes sense for you. And you are deciding to show up differently and authentically and vulnerable. And as you do that, you are setting an example for other people to show up as perfectly imperfect, because we all are. And again, how beautiful is that? So again, now we've grounded ourselves, we've reflected, we've accepted and we've thanked, we've ignited, and then we've started to transform, and then we've uncovered things, and then we've decided what to do with them, right? So what's left? Well, we emerge. So step 9 of gratitude is emerging. And as you go through, again, this entire process, and you get to that last step, you will no doubt emerge differently than the person you started off as. It might be a very small difference that only you notice. It might be a huge difference that everybody notices. But at the end of the day, you will emerge different and you will emerge changed. And when people start taking notice of that change, there's something so beautiful in that, because usually you're shining just a little bit brighter because you have shed some things from yourself, and it could be externally or internally. You also are just showing up a little more vulnerable, a little more intentionally, and being in a space with somebody else that just feels good and exudes gratitude and exudes that love and joy and that energy that comes with that. And so when I talk about these 9 steps of gratitude, you can do them very quickly. And when I say quickly, you can sit down within 5 minutes and think about, like, the hands over heart took 3 seconds, 5 seconds. So imagine going through all of those steps, because sometimes things are going on in our life where we just need to take that intentional moment and really start understanding where we are at this very moment, at this very time. And it's not about going back through history of our lives. It's about going maybe back through the past 5 minutes of what has happened. So you can take all of that and emerge out into this space of beautiful shining light and gratitude that you can then bring to that next moment and that next interaction. You can also do this over a very long period of time. And you can take, so I like to do a 90 days of gratitude. I actually have a 90 days of gratitude Facebook group, and you're welcome to join, and anybody's welcome. And we spend 90 days. And we spend 90 days looking at the different steps of gratitude and spending time on those. In fact, the last 90 days that we just did, we took 10 days of each one and different ways of practicing it and acting within those spaces of grounding and reflecting and acceptance and so on. So we took each one of those and moved forward. So really, again, it can take as short or as long as you want it to. But knowing that at the end that you are going to emerge differently than how you started can be scary. Because if you think about a butterfly, and they start off as a caterpillar, and they are nested in their cocoon, and that cocoon is nice and warm, and there's nobody coming in, and you don't have any expectations, you're just in a cocoon. And when you start to spread your wings as a butterfly, and you start to come out of it, and if you've ever watched this metamorphosis happen, it's pretty phenomenal. But wings start to spread, and they're a little bit wet when they first come out. The cocoon doesn't fall off completely. And then finally it starts kind of detaching itself from the butterfly. And then ultimately, after a period of time, the wings start to spread, and they spread even more. They dry out, and then the butterfly can fly away. And butterflies are still fragile, right? But if you think about a monarch that can fly thousands and thousands of miles, even though they are fragile, they want to spread their wings and their beauty for everybody to see. And for them, it's about being beautiful in this world and taking and pollinating this world. That's part of what they're doing. So if you think about yourself in that way, where you are pollinating the world with your gratitude and your version of gratitude and what it is that you're feeling inwardly for gratitude, and how do you spread that out into the world? So again, the 9 steps of gratitude, and gratitude truly is a verb, because you can act on every single one of these steps for yourself and ultimately in the world. And to help you with that, I actually have something for you today, and I really hope that you take advantage of it, which is Stepping into Gratitude, and the book itself that I talked about, that I put together. And it's yours, and all you have to do is sign up for my mailing list and follow me, and I'll follow you back. And please reach out to me at any time. Ask me questions. I love to engage in conversations about gratitude. It has changed my life at the core, and it will continue to change my life. And I know that by practicing gratitude and knowing that gratitude is a verb, it will impact you in the most positive of ways. Thank you so much for joining me today. It has been my greatest pleasure and honor to be here with you, and I look forward to hearing from each and every one of you.